talking about the practically walking out and living out this life of being unified and being one with Christ, not just having it as a concept or an isolated experience when we're alone, but actually living it out and seeing the fruit of that new life, that life of union in our daily life, in our relationships, on our job, in our business, in our thinking, in the way we process and the way we react to people and to situations. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Welcome to the journey. I am Aurora, and I'm so glad that you're here joining me today for this leg of our journey. We have been talking about our oneness with Christ, and today I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the practical aspects. I really like to gather information, but I also love to have information that's practical that I can live out in my everyday life. And so we've been talking about things in a theoretical kind of way, and even inviting us to experience our oneness with Christ and step into encounters with Him. And so today I just want to talk a little bit about the practical side of things as much as possible. It's kind of a challenge to make some of these concepts and translate into practical ways that we can apply every day, because some things, they say is better caught than taught. But I'm going to do my best, and we'll try to convey how we can live out our union with Christ in a very practical way. So the first thing I would say is, when we're talking about this oneness, living this union life with Christ, one of the first realizations that I had to come to was that I did not have to live my life in the distinction of something that is spiritual and something that is not spiritual. So in other words, if I was praying, or if I was reading my Bible, or if I was at church, or I was serving in some capacity, or doing something that I felt was a spiritual action, then I put those things in a spiritual box and said, these are the things that I do in, with, and for Christ. And they have their own little place and own little setting. But then when it came to things like, everyday life, like going to work, having conversations with loved ones, fixing dinner, washing clothes, making plans for the future, those kinds of things, I wasn't as in tune in my oneness with Christ for those things. I would be cognizant of His principles. I would be aware of what I considered to be His plan or His path based on His written word. But it wasn't so much that I was living out of that experience and out of that continual flow and encounter and awareness of my union and my oneness with Him. Not just that He was out there somewhere giving me guidance, but that He really, truly, and genuinely is on the inside of me, prompting me, leading me, guiding me. And not only that, but we have become one. So one thing that I had to come to the realization was, there is no distinction, and I don't have to compartmentalize my life in that way to think these things are spiritual and these things are not, because truly my whole life I can live out in, with, and through Christ, which makes everything that I do have eternal value, and that has the potential, at least as I'm learning to walk out and to live that full life in Him. So I don't have to think to myself, well, you know what, I'm going to go sit down and watch TV for a minute, and after a while I'll go sit and I'll talk with Jesus. I'll have some time to pray and commune with Him. But in all actuality, and I've loved to do this recently, I'll sit down and I'll say, Lord, what do we want to watch? And that may sound foreign to some, because you're saying, well, God doesn't want to watch TV. Well, He's in me, and we can watch TV together. And you know what? That makes the television time even more safe, I would say, because I'm not saying, Jesus, you wait over there for me to get done and I'll come be with you later, but I'm sitting with Him in that very moment, and we are enjoying together. And what that allows me to do is be so in tune and so sensitive, so when things start to go a little bit too far off to the side, or maybe I'm watching a little bit longer than I need to at the time, well, I can feel within myself, hey, it's time to make a shift. It's time to make an adjustment. We can either put on something else or move on to another activity, or whatever we need to do in that moment. But since I'm doing it in, with, and through Him, I don't have to set Him aside and just try to think of what He would want, but I'm actually living out that union in that moment, and I'm in tune in real time and saying, okay, Lord, what are we doing next? Now, I'm not saying to be overly trying to find out every little step. Lord, when should I blink? When should I have a drink of what? No, not any kind of crazy way like that. It's more of just a silent communication. It's like a silent communion. When you sit with your loved one and you've known them for a long time, well, you can be in their presence and you really don't have to be saying a lot, but you can feel the mood. You can feel what's going on because you know that person and you've interacted with them long enough. Sometimes, we might go shopping or go do something. My daughter likes to shop a little bit more than I do, and so we'll be out together and I won't say anything, but she'll be watching me and she'll know, okay, our time shopping is winding up. It's time to feed mom. We need to move on to what we're going to eat, because that's my favorite part of the day. And so without a word, she'll know, okay, we're going to have to wind up this shopping event and move on to something else. But it's the same way in our walk and our oneness and our union with Christ. It's not a matter of asking every little question and scared to do something wrong. No, it really is a life of ease in his spirit, because we're not looking for just some check box that we can check and say that we did what was right or we did what was good, but we're living in a continual flow, a continual relationship with him by his spirit, confirmed through his word. And it's a life of freedom, and it's a life that has great value. And so we can, even like I said, sitting back watching television, I don't have to put Jesus to the side to do that, because I'm doing it in communion and union with him, which will help govern and help guide actually what I'm taking in and what I'm feeding myself. And that's just one activity, because typically we don't consider television watching very spiritual, and it may not be. But if I do it from a standpoint of being in Christ and the fact that we are doing this together and he is free to lead me and to guide me and to let me know within my spirit what it's time for and what we need to move on to and do next, then that activity becomes something that is birthed out of my union with him. And then there's less that I have to go back and erase from my mind, because I wasn't doing that in my own strength or my own wisdom, my own understanding. I was moving in real-time communion with Holy Spirit while I was doing that activity. So take that into whatever activity that you can think of: going to the grocery store, talking with a family member, working on your job, planning for your business. Whatever it is, we can do that from a place of being in union and oneness with him. Now, something else that I begin to learn is that I can increase my awareness of my union with Christ. I can increase my awareness of his presence in and with me. And ways that I can do that, I can read scriptures that are reminding me and affirming to me the fact that I am in him and he is in me and we are now one. That's going to increase my awareness. And I'm not just going to read them and check that box and say, okay, I'm done, but I'm going to read them. I'm going to meditate on them. I'm going to sit back and let him paint a picture in my heart. I'm going to embrace the feelings that come along with that union and that oneness. When we like to watch, sometimes we may like to watch the romantic movies on television, and decent romantic movies on television where there's love and there's connection and there's an embrace between people. And when you're watching those things, you kind of get to experience it yourself. What maybe a couple is getting married and they're standing there looking one another in their eyes and they're pledging to be faithful, to be loyal, to be true, and to be with one another until the end. We like weddings, we like those kind of things because we get to experience to a degree what they are experiencing. And so when we are increasing our awareness of our union with Christ, even through reading scriptures, reading his word, meditating, sitting back and experiencing those encounters, it puts an imprint on the inside of us. And so when we move out, quote unquote, because we never really have to move out of his presence, so to speak, but we may not be in that set aside time all day long because, there are other things that we need to go and do. But we take that place of encounter with us. We take that place of experience with us and we allow it to continually flow. We don't leave it behind in a prayer room or leave it behind in a prayer closet, leave it behind in our quote unquote time with God, but we take it with us into everything that we're doing. And then we can live from that flow, from that place of encounter that we had in that set aside time. So we're increasing our awareness of our union with him through reading his word, through meditating, through yielding our imagination to him, through yielding our heart to him, allowing him to speak to us in whatever way that he wants to. Something else that is in connection with walking out this union life in a practical way is it connects back to our declarations. We did a video a while back called I Am, and I'm not afraid to say it. You know, when we begin to declare and to say who we are, what we are, how God has created us in our own unique identity. When we're doing that in our own time, aside from specific events and encounters that we would have in life interacting with others, if I'm taking the time to say, I am loved, I am whole, I am righteous, I am pure, I am accepted by God, and I'm taking the time to make those declarations, they are becoming a reality in me, so that when I go out and I do face those situations, say I go to work and I was left out of a meeting, and all of a sudden the feeling starts to come up in me, oh, I'm left out, I'm rejected. But because I've been making those decrees and declarations about who God says I am, then all of a sudden there's something to counter that feeling that comes up when I feel that I've been left out. Wait, I'm rejected, I was left out, they did that on purpose. No, I am loved, I am accepted, I am His, I belong, and all of that we've received in our quiet time when we were alone or we were making those declarations, that comes and it starts to override that lie. It starts to override that negativity, but it comes out of that place of our union with Him, knowing the truth about who we are, because it's what He has said about us, and it is promises that He has made to us. Now, another practical way that I have found this plays out in my life is that when I find myself at a crossroads, in other words, I'm at a place where I realize that I have a choice to make, and that choice is I can act out of my own fallen emotions, my own desire to defend myself, my own state of anger, or I can yield to the Christ life that is on the inside of me. And we all find ourselves at those crossroads sometime. And sometimes the funny thing is we don't realize it until after it's already passed. And then we just have to kind of look back and learn from that mistake. But when I find myself at those crossroads, because when I'm in my time of intimacy and I'm in all by myself and there's no one there to pluck me, then I can be just so intent that I'm just going to walk out this life. I'm going to be just the most loving person you've ever met. I'm just going to be forgiving and so good and so generous and so kind. And that's all wonderful and easy to do as long as I'm just sitting in that place, that all by myself, just communing with God. But see, when it comes to the test is when we are encountering others, and when we're encountering situations that contradict that person that we know that we are. Oh, I'm just so loving, I'm full of grace and compassion, and I speak words that are seasoned with grace and lifting up everyone that's around me. But then we come into those places where people do rub us the wrong way, or situations come around and they are disappointing. Well, what do we do then? So when we're at those crossroads, one practical way that I've learned to let that play out is, rather than saying, oh no, this person has made me so mad and I really have to try hard not to say the mean things that I want to say. So rather than doing that and trying to muster up my willpower, what I can do is just kind of sit back within myself and find that place, that place of encounter where I was encountering God's love for myself, where I was experiencing His forgiveness for myself, where I was experiencing His grace for myself. And I move back into that moment in my heart. You know, it's a quick thing. It doesn't take long. Really, I'm just acknowledging, becoming aware, or reckoning myself to be in that place. And I'm saying, you know what? The love of God is in me because we are one. His patience is my patience because we are one. His joy, His grace is my joy and grace because we are one. So it's not Aurora trying to work up and be a good Christian. It's me sitting back and acknowledging, hey, I'm one with Him. I have His DNA. And how does He want to respond? Not what would Jesus do as though He was off somewhere in the past and no longer alive, but what is Jesus doing right now? What does Jesus want to say to this person right now? Well, how does He want to act? How does He want to behave? How does He want to correspond in this situation? And so in that quick moment, I just settle myself back and I tune into that oneness and begin to flow from that place. And that interaction is going to be much, much different than it would have been if I just said, you know what, I know how to handle this. I know how to put them in their place. I know what to say. I know what to do. And it brings about a beneficial state for all, even if it is maybe challenging, even if there are hard things that need to be said. It can be said from a place of oneness with Christ, which means that it's coming from a heart of love. So even if it is tough, or even if it is correction, it is the foundation of that is still a heart of love, and it's still a heart of compassion. So I'm not mustering up strength in my own self trying to do what's right, but I'm yielding to the unified life, to the Christ union that has taken place on the inside of me. I've got his DNA. Everything he has, I have access to, and I just allow that to flow. So one day I was sitting and I was talking with God, and I was telling him, as usual, that, I appreciate him, and just asking him what he wanted to say to me today. And this is what I believe he revealed to my heart. He says, I can, I am, I will, more than willing, more than able, put your trust and hope in me. I can carry you into this new way of living, this new way being this unified life of union with Christ, untangled from all the cords and connections to this fallen world, not participating in the fall, but implementing the new creation life and kingdom. Transformation, revelation, restoration. Join with those I am drawing. Strength comes from others, not alone. The journey is long, but glorious. And this was my response, because he had been talking to me about this new life, this untangled life, one that was not bound and connected to all the fallen systems and the ways that I had been trained in and had been living in this world. And so I asked him, I said, I was kind of frustrated too. I'm like, how do I stay in this place and stop wavering back and forth between the two realms and natures? That was my frustration. I was frustrated with that because I could see it. I could feel it, and I knew that it was right here for me to walk in, but it just seemed like when it came down to it, I still kept going back to responding in my own way. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about like I just came to Christ. No, I've been walking with Christ since I was a young teenager. But even then, that does not automatically mean that we really have the true understanding and the true revelation and the true fullness of the light and the revelation of Christ flowing in and through us. That comes with time. And so in this situation, I'm asking him, how do I stop wavering between the two? And this is what he says. This is so powerful. I love this. He says, reckon yourself dead to the old system, ways, and entanglements, pains that constantly reach up to grab your attention, fears that scream for you to take action. Blockage of the heart is not part of my system. Love always flows in this realm of living. When blockage arises, open the gates and let love flow. Connect, engage, embrace. There is fullness in connection. So when I was asking him, how do I do this? It seems like I keep falling back into an old way. He said to me, reckon yourself dead. And of course, the translation that I had memorized that scripture in when I first came to Christ was the King James Version. And so you would recognize that language if you're familiar with that. I'm going to read just a little bit of that from the Passion Translation. He says, this is Romans 6, and we'll start at verse 7. It says, obviously a dead person is incapable of sinning, and if we were co-crucified with the Anointed One, we know that we will also share in the fullness of his life. And we know that since the Anointed One has been raised from the dead to die no more, his resurrection life has vanquished death, and its power over him is finished. For by his sacrifice he died to sin's power once and for all, but he now lives continuously in the Father's pleasure. And here we go. This is where we come to reckon yourself. He says, so let it be the same way with you. Since you are now joined with him, joined with him, you must continually view yourselves as dead and unresponsive to sin's appeal. While living, you must no longer give it an opportunity to rule. Oh, excuse me, I skipped a line here. While living daily for God's pleasure in union with Jesus, that's so good, the Anointed One. Sin is a dethroned monarch, so you must no longer give it an opportunity to rule over your life, controlling how you live and compelling you to obey its desires and cravings. So then refuse to answer its call to surrender your body as a tool for wickedness. And I'll stop there because it's getting hot and I'm starting to sweat. But I think if you go back and read that for yourself, you can see how beautifully that applies. So we're talking about the practicality, practically walking out and living out this life of being unified and being one with Christ, not just having it as a concept or an isolated experience when we're alone, but actually living it out and seeing the fruit of that new life, that life of union in our daily life, in our relationships, on our job, in our business, in our thinking, in the way we process and the way we react to people and to situations. And just to recap briefly, we said that we don't, and these are just a few ideas. I hope that, however you have found that you can live out this union life, not just a concept about Jesus, but actually living it out in day-to-day living in real time. I hope you'll add those to our chat. I hope we can make a community down there. Just share how God works through you in that way and encourage somebody how they can walk out this life in a real way. You can add that to the chat if you want to. But we said we don't have to make a distinction between what is spiritual and what is not spiritual, because we can take anything we do. If Scripture says that whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God, then surely I can eat, drink, and live my whole life in a way that's out of a place of union with Christ to the glory of God. So I don't have to make a distinction and say this is with Christ and this is not. No, I can live, that's my goal, my whole life from a place of being in union with Him. Also, we said it connects with our declarations and our confessions, what we're saying about ourselves. So when the situation does arise, we can live out who God says that we are, because we are reprogramming our mind and we're reprogramming the way that we think and believe about ourselves in advance. We're doing the prep work. So when the opportunity comes, those words are already present in our heart and mind. And then also we said that when we come to a crossroad and we have to make that choice, so to speak, as to how we're going to move out, am I going to take things into my own hand, or am I going to live out of that place of union with Christ? It's not a matter of me mustering my own strength, but rather it's a matter of me yielding myself and becoming attuned and aware that I'm not alone, I'm not an orphan, I'm not abandoned, I don't have to take up for myself. I can sit back and ask God what He is saying in this situation, not what would Jesus do, but what is He doing in me and through me right now. We're partnered together in this life, and He has a unique and distinct expression through each and every one of us. So I hope that helped you out today. Like I said, add to the comments, add to the chat down below how you are living out this union life in a practical day-to-day way, where you can see the fruit, where you can see the change of a mindset and a shift in our awareness, not just that Jesus is a theory, not just that our salvation is a stamp, a ticket to heaven, but we're living this out, not just following rules and regulations, but rather living in real time, a spirit-led, spirit-filled, life-filled life through our union with Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you. Bye-bye.